Welcome to the new episode of History of Rock. In this episode, I'll be exploring the ever-changing career of David Bowie. David Jones was born in London in 1947 into a working-class family. His mum was known to be cold and uncaring. David's brother was also sent to a mental asylum for schizophrenia. David was also known to be saying that he wanted to get out of the house and never look back. The early years of Bowie's career had very little success. Bowie would try different styles of music. He had bands like David Jones and the Bees. He'd also try to stand out from the crowd. One thing majorly helping him would be an incident that happened to him when he was 15, when his friend punched him in the eye, forever changing his eye. This would eventually help him out getting his own style and look. While trying to find the style to fit him best, he met his first wife, Angela Barton, and eventually have his son, Duncan Jones. He and his friends also in this time opened a folk club for people to try out their own music. They would also open a free music festival. Even though hardly publicising it, it would get over 1,000 people showing up. David would get eventually some success with writing the song Over the Wall, but just like the last band I spoke of, the BBC banned it from airing. He would eventually get success in 1969 when he released Space Odyssey. And released his first persona, Major Tom. Even though the BBC banned his last song, he wrote, they used Space Odyssey for their coverage of the moon landing. After this, Bowie went back to being unknown. Bowie was known for using the cut-up technique by the poet William, and sorry if I get the name wrong, Bert Shirey. Yeah, the name's on the screen. This would mean that Bowie would write the songs and then cut it up line by line, then rearrange them to make the song unique, just like him. Bowie was known to be saying that he hated the sound of his own voice when he was singing, but his friends said he sounded like Anthony Newley.
Don't you realize we're living to die? I'm happy to say the good old bad old day.
This wasn't a big surprise since Newley was one of Bowie's biggest inspirations. In 1972, England was crippled, everyone was going on a strike, and England was dead, but the next year something new and weird would land in England, and its name would be Ziggy Stardust.
Really sad, screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo.
Ziggy was Bowie's second persona, and considered the most iconic. Everyone fell in love with the new weird man. After the success of Ziggy, he moved to America, and while in America he started work on a new film called The Man Who Fell to Earth. And while doing an interview he revealed that he was coming back to England, but what he didn't tell people, that it would be the end of Ziggy Stardust. Even though Bowie had been out of the country for a few years, and a lot had changed, England welcomed him back with open arms, and even the newly formed punks seemed to like him, for his weird styles. But while doing the tour, some of his equipment was stolen by some young boys. One of those young boys was Steve Jones, the guitarist for the Sex Pistols. After the tour, he started something new. His next persona, the Fine White Duke. His fans would start copying Bowie's style and dressing like his characters, but each year they would be caught by surprise when Bowie would have a new character to release. But in 1980, he divorced his wife Angela. Bowie would eventually get a manager who would act like a Malcolm McLaren, but unlike the Sex Pistols, he did not end music for a bit. All he did was go straight into business and started producing his own music and even helped some other artists with their music like Iggy Pop. Through the 80s he had some successes with Heroes and Let It Down being some of his biggest hits, but throughout the 90s he really did not do much with his music. He went to Berlin with Iggy Pop and worked on some songs, then eventually go on tour with Iggy Pop. He would eventually marry a model called Ima, sorry if I got the name wrong again, and moved to New York and had a daughter, Alex Jones. In 2003 he would release his 23rd album, Reality, and after this album and tour he would not release any new songs or albums for 13 years. In 2013 he released a new album, Black Star, that seemed to have a dark message hidden inside the songs. The tour was ready to go, but sadly 3 days later, Bowie died of cancer. His friends and family guessed that Black Star was David's way of telling people that he was dying. And in Bowie's death, he changed how people thought of him. People didn't cry at his death, but celebrated what he did in life. Bowie was one of the most important artists in history, and his effect in music will be felt forever. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like for more. Go and support us on Patreon. Goodbye.